What's going on, YouTube? So before we get into the video real quick, I just want to shout out the Trigger Man. Thank you for that shout out. I appreciate you, bro. He's probably the only other paint channel that I don't miss a video when he releases one, because he's genuinely entertaining and he has good content. He covers good topics. He has good information, and clearly he's been doing this a long time. So if I can learn something from him, you guys can definitely learn something from him too. If you don't already check out his videos, if you're not already subscribed, I suggest you go do that. It'll definitely help you out. That aside, someone suggested that I did kind of like raw videos like the Gunman. I thought that was a really good idea because, you know, sometimes when you're doing a paint job, things go wrong. And if I didn't already start recording a video and something goes wrong, I'm not gonna go pick up my camera when I got a problem to fix. But if I start the video and something goes wrong, then I'm going to show you guys how to get out of the trouble that I got into. And the last thing I want to mention before we actually get into the good stuff is, in this video, we're going to cover a very common problem that painters run into on their blend panels. So let's drop some sealer down. I'm going to show you guys everything start to finish. I mean, I already cleaned everything and I sealed 2 of my panels, but I didn't seal the blend panel because that's going to be the focus of this video. So we're going to seal that blend panel now, and I'll just take you guys step by step through everything that I do. I am going to use a wet bed, and when I put that wet bed on, if you pay close attention, you're going to see what that problem is that we have to deal with. And it's way too common that we have to deal with this problem. It really is the last thing you want to deal with as a painter. Anyway, let's get into it. So we're doing a new fender with the door blend and partial repair on that bumper. This is probably the most common repair that any body shop does. Okay, so there's my sealer. Now I'm going to show you guys what I do with that sealer edge. Normally, I would let it dry and I would put a coat of base over it, and then I would sand down the edge of the base, and that would get me nice and smooth, and then I can carry on from there. But with silver, I want to sand as little as possible because silver does not fill in scratches. They will show after you clear your car, and then you got to go back and repaint it. So I just try to avoid sanding altogether on silvers. I'll show you guys how I do that. All right, so this is the reducer that our sealer uses. This thing is beat up. We get the 5 gallon and then I just refill this thing. Anyway, this is the reducer that my sealer uses. So what I'll do, if I don't have any of that 1K blender, which I don't right now, I would just use that. I'll just pour a little of this in my cup like that. And then we'll head into the booth with that. Okay, we're in the booth. I got the reducer in the gun. Now, when you do this, you want to apply the reducer right to that edge very lightly. Usually I do 1 pass just like that. This pressure is a little too high for that. Let me lower it. There we go. That's it. That's it. That's going to smooth that edge right out. But just to be safe, because it's a silver, we're going to do a wet bed. When I do this wet bed, I want you guys to look closely at this panel and see if you could spot the problem that we got to deal with as painters way too often. And it's not our fault. Okay, we got our clear additive in the gun. I'm going to shoot this right over any panel that has a blend. So this bumper has a blend. Now we're going to shoot it. Well, first let me hit the A pillar. Now we're going to shoot the door. I want you guys to pay close attention. See if you could spot where this problem lies. Now, it was poured to the top of the door. If you saw it, drop it in the comments right now. If you didn't, I'll show you in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Blow through. So when the guy is prepping the panel, sometimes on these hard edges, he'll blow through the color. And that's the last thing you want to do, because the whole reason we're painting this panel at all is to blend our color. Usually on the door, your blend ends somewhere in the middle to the back half of the door. Usually the beginning of the back half of the door is where my blends end personally. So when you have to put color here, about, I don't know, 5-6 inches away from the next panel, it's just not something you want to do. So I'm going to show you guys how I handle that. All right, while we wait for that to flash off just a little, I like to spray the color when it's still wet, but not completely wet. I'll usually give it about half the flash off time it normally takes to dry. In the meantime, we'll shoot our color on our panel that doesn't have any color blender on it. I would always suggest to shoot the edges first on your panels. This way, any overspray that gets on there, by the time you go and do the rest of your panel, like this, that overspray is still going to be wet. So when you apply your wet coat, you'll melt it right in. It's just the way I like to do things. It's not, you don't necessarily have to do it like that. It's really just preference. Let's shoot our color on our bumper. Now we'll shoot our color on our A-pillar. On my first coat, I usually aim to get the middle of the fan right where my sealer ends. Something a little weird going on there. You see the ring around it? Not sure why that is, but this is why we're gonna do some raw videos, so we can run into issues like this and solve them together. Now, because this color is gonna cover my sealer so quick, I'll just start blending out on my first coat. And real quick, I just wanna mention, for you guys that are wondering why I'm not using my Iwata, which I use for everything, this is a $100 gun. That kind of blew me away in the video that I reviewed it. If you didn't watch that video, go check it out. Sorry for the audio in 2 of those clips. Copyright, had to remove a song, and it destroyed the audio. Anyway, here we go. Okay, now, how do I handle that? First thing I want to do is close my fan. I usually want to get my fan about the same size as that blow through. So I would consider it from edge to edge on this handle, probably about 4.5, 5 inches. Whoa, okay. That should be good right there. I could open it up a little more. That's good. And then, of course, when you close your fan that much, you have to lower your pressure. So, lower my pressure. Still a little too high. That's perfect. Okay, I'll shoot it sideways just to minimize how much color is getting up and down. You could turn the air cap, but I'm not gonna do that. And then I just try to be as precise as possible. That's really the key here. And you can see we're pretty much covered already. I will do one more light coat the same way. You guys will see it though. Let's let this flash off and we'll come back in about 10 minutes. Okay, let's throw our second wet coat. I do the same thing on my second coat. I get all my edges first. Now, on our blends, obviously on our second coat, we'll bring our color out a little further. Let's throw a little back here. Okay, now, as for, okay, the ring, you can still see the ring there. So sometimes that could happen. Maybe I didn't clean the panel correctly. That could be the only thing I could think of. You could still see it in there. It's kind of hard to see. So to fix that, instead of sanding or anything like that, because remember we're painting silver, we want to avoid sanding, what I'll do is I'll just throw a dry coat over here, because sometimes going wet can exacerbate an issue that you have going on. So we'll just throw a dry coat over it, and then after the door, we'll come back and hit it again. Now, as for this problem, you could see we have coverage. I'd say we have about 95% coverage, which is good because you want to put as little color as possible. Obviously, I can't just do what I did and that's it, problem solved. No, because there's going to be color around here that's different. And if I don't blend that out, it's going to be an issue. So what I want to do is I want to try to blend that out, but towards where I'm putting color, not towards the door edge. So I'll start at the door edge because I have no choice. And I have my fan wide open, as you can see there. And I'm just going to give it one pass, and that's it. That's it. That should be enough to blend that color out. I won't touch that again. Now, as for our blend, you could see how adding that reducer and then throwing wet bed over it really made that edge really, really smooth. Now again, same thing, second coat, we're gonna blend out a little further, always starting where we put our sealer. And what I like to do is go in a cross pattern, and I'm going further out. And that's it. Once this flashes off, it should look pretty good. And then we'll be able to do our drop coat. So for those of you who are new around here, what I like to do on my drop coat with my silvers is zero out my scale, put that on there. We got the cup's about 10 grams, so we have about 107 grams here. Then I will take some of my blender that I just used. I have a little left over. And this blender is already reduced 30% because that's what the manufacturer tells us to reduce it. And so 107 grams, about 10 grams. So I'm just gonna put 10 grams in. I go a little over 10. There you go, 11 grams, that's fine. Now, you don't have to use the color blender. You could use a reducer, you know, whatever reducer you use for your paint, you could just over reduce this. Kind of will have the same effect. I prefer to use the blender because it adds a little more body to the color. And with silver, any more body you can get into this paint, the better off you're gonna be, because apply more evenly, which will help you avoid the common issues you run into when you're painting silvers. Okay, we're back in the booth with our color a little weaker because we added that clear additive to it. We're doing our drop coat, lower your pressure, and move nice and slow. That's it. Your panel should look like silk after that coat. I did the bumper already. You can see here, we got rid of that ring by doing a dry coat. Basically, when you do a dry coat, you're applying, I mean, obviously you're applying dry paint, but you're creating like a bridge for your next layer to sit on top of, which is not necessarily the best thing, but as long as you don't apply your paint that way in so many coats, it's not gonna affect the outcome of your paint job in the long run. Okay, there we go. And now we'll do our drop coat on our panel. And because we have a weaker color in the gun, we're gonna go even further. Always starting where you put your sealer. Making sure you bring that color all the way to the edge every time. Now, I did just run out of freaking paint, but we should be good. This is what I mean, one of those problems you run into. If you let the gun sit here for a second, you'll get a little more paint out of it. All I had left to do was about 3 more passes. So we'll see, I might get it out of the gun. There's one. We only get one. Nah, but it looks like it should be good. What I'll do is I'll turn the booth lights off. I'll grab my spotlight and I'll check it with you guys. Okay, actually, instead of checking to make sure it's covered, I'm just gonna mix more paint. Now the problem is when you run out of paint like that, you can't just mix enough to finish that panel. You have to mix enough to give everything you're painting another drop coat. Because if I mix this, even if I mix it exactly how I mixed it before, there's a chance that it could be a slightly different color. And now, if I'm putting a slightly different color on my door that I'm only painting to blend so it matches, now it might not match. So do it the right way. I'm just gonna go ahead, mix about 4 ounces of paint, put my my clear additive in there, and give everything one more drop coat. Okay, so I just mixed a little more paint and I did that drop coat. There was no sense in making you guys watch me do that, but that's the whole purpose of these raw videos, is so when something goes wrong like that, you can see, you know, the right way to fix it. And might I have been good without doing that extra drop coat? Yeah, but at the end of the day, the job's not gonna look how it would have looked if I didn't run out of paint. So that's kind of a standard I hold myself to. So that's why I decided, you know what, let me go mix the paint and do this the right way. The last thing I want to mention with these silvers, after you're done with your last coat of color, if you normally give your color 10 minutes to flash off in between coats, give it twice as much time. Because if your silver is not dry and you go to apply your clear over it, I mean, you could have applied that silver perfectly, no streaking, no modeling, no issues at all. But if it's not dry and you start putting clear over it, it's gonna start modeling on you. I don't know why that is. I guess every color does it technically, but it's only noticeable with the silvers. If it does happen to you, what you can do is heat that panel up. If you heat the panel up, it'll get the moisture out, it'll get rid of the streaking, and then you can continue applying your clear. I had to learn that the hard way by applying my clear before my silver was dry. My booth, I have a base bake cycle, which is basically a 10-minute cycle, 10-minute baking cycle. And I'll use that after my last coat before my clear. So it's still 10 minutes that I normally give it to flash off, but it's cooking at 130 degrees. So 10 minutes at 130 degrees, I would say is pretty equivalent to doubling your flash off time. I'm gonna mix some clear and then we'll get back in the booth and clear this thing up. All right, we're back in the booth. Here's how our blend panel turned out. No sign of that sealer edge anywhere. No sign of our blend anywhere either. A good tip for you guys who are beginners, usually you could look at your tape to see, you know, to see your blend, to make sure that color falls out nice and evenly. Also to make sure that your color ends before the end of your panel. And up here where we had that issue that painters just love dealing with, you could see that we barely have any color on that edge, as well as no sign of the coverage and the blend out. I think it's safe to say we're ready for clear. All right, we're using our Porpoise, of course. We are slightly under 2 bar pressure. Let's get it done. I'll also show you guys what I do for our blend area, or where we're blending the clear. I'll show you guys how I do that as well. All right, that's our first coat. You can see it's still a little dry, but
I never worry about that. That's fine. I'd rather it be a little dry on this first coat. It's gonna give my second coat something real good to hold on to so I can lay it on there real wet. Okay, here we go, second coat. And of course, we ran out. Ah, boy. All right, I'm gonna mix more, finish up this door, and hopefully it'll be all right. It should be all right. And then I'll show you guys the finished product. Okay, we mixed up a little more. We're gonna find our dry edge and start right in the middle. Oh yeah, we'll be all right. We'll be fine. Looks good. Let me show you guys what I do with this blend up here now. Okay, so this is straight reducer in here now. I go right on that edge. And that's it. Same thing on my bumper. This is just gonna thin that edge out. Right where your clear stops. So it'll melt in to the existing clear. And that'll just need a little polish. You don't even have to sand it. All right, let's let it flash off and I'll show you guys how it looks.
Okay, here's our finished product. You can see no sign of that blend anywhere. No modeling, no issues at all. And most importantly, we handled this and you see no issues with the color around here. I tried pulling the tape back, but it's too tacky still. I'm gonna make a mess, so you just have to take my word for it that we didn't affect the color here. I mean, the tape kind of gives that away because there's barely any color there, and we have coverage, and we don't see any color difference around that handle. Got a real nice finish on it. Here's the rest of the job. So I'm just gonna start a new playlist for videos like this. I'm sure eventually I'll, get things on camera where shit goes wrong, and then I'll show you guys how I handle it. And I'll also try to include a little tip or trick in there as well for stuff like what I was dealing with around this handle here. But yeah, that's it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, got any value out of it, please like, comment, maybe subscribe, and even share it. Thank you, guys. Peace.